The stars had never looked so cold to Ambassador Zeleth as they did now. She pressed her pale blue hands against the viewing port of the Cathara command ship. Watching the last transport vessels flee from the outer colonies, behind them, entire worlds burned. The Vorthok had come 3 months ago. At first the report seemed impossible to believe. Massive bioships that looked like flying insects, each one the size of a city. They consumed everything in their path. Plants, animals, even the soil itself vanished into their hungry mouths. What remained were dead gray rocks floating in space. Zeleth closed her large dark eyes and tried not to think about the millions who had already died. The Cathara were a peaceful people. They built gardens on their worlds, studied the stars, and wrote poetry. They had never needed armies or weapons of war. Now their enemies came from the darkness between stars. The Cathara had nothing to fight them with. "Ambassador," came a soft voice behind her. Zeleth turned to see Communications Officer Vises approaching with a datapad in his 4-fingered hands. His usual calm demeanor was gone, replaced by barely controlled fear. "We have received responses to our distress call." Zeleth felt her heart sink. She had sent the message to every known civilization in the galaxy 3 weeks ago. It was a simple plea for help, transmitted in 17 different languages. The Cathara Confederation was dying, and they needed military aid to survive. How many responded? She asked, though she dreaded the answer. 43 civilizations, Thesis replied. 38 sent formal regrets. They cite distance, existing conflicts, or resource limitations. 3 others offered to accept refugees but cannot provide military assistance. Zeleth nodded slowly. She had expected this. The galaxy was vast, and every species had their own problems. The Cathara lived on the outer rim, far from the major trade routes and political centers. They were alone. "What about the other 2 responses?" she asked. Thesis looked confused. "One is from the hegemony of aligned worlds. They express sympathy but suggest we consider alternative solutions to our refugee problem. The other, ... double quotes, checking his datapad again. The other is unusual. In what way? It comes from a species called humans. They live on a planet called Earth in the Sol system. I had to look it up in our databases. They achieved faster than light travel only 50 years ago. Very new to galactic society," Zeleth frowned. "A species that young would barely have enough ships to defend their own world, let alone help others." "What did they say?" "They said they would send military assistance immediately. They have dispatched something called the EDS Retribution with a full crew. Expected arrival in 4 days." For a moment, Zeleth felt a spark of hope. Then reality set in. 1 ship? Against the entire Vorthok swarm? "That appears to be what they are offering," Thesis said quietly. Zeleth looked back out at the stars. For days, the Vorthok would reach the core worlds in 6 days. Even if these humans arrived on time, what could 1 ship accomplish? Still, she had learned not to reject any offer of help, no matter how small. On the other side of the galaxy, Captain Jake Morrison stood in the briefing room of Luna Station, staring at the holographic display of the Cathara system. The images were not pleasant. Entire planets showed as dead gray spheres, stripped of all life. Red markers indicated the advancing Vorthok fleet positions. "Sir," said Lieutenant Amy Chen, the mission's science officer, "I have finished analyzing the Cathara data transmission. The enemy bioships appear to be organic constructs, possibly grown rather than built. Each one is approximately 2 kilometers in length." Morrison rubbed his jaw. At 45, he had fought in more battles than he cared to remember. The Mars colonial wars had taught him that size did not always matter in space combat. But 2-kilometer bioships were still impressive. "How many ships do they have?" "Conservative estimate puts the Vorthok fleet at over 200 vessels," Chen replied. "Possibly more." "And we are sending 1 ship," said Colonel Beth Rodriguez from her seat at the conference table. Her tone was neutral, but Morrison could see the skepticism in her dark eyes. As the commander of the Marine detachment, Rodriguez had the responsibility of actually fighting whatever they encountered. "The Retribution is not just any ship," Morrison reminded them. "She is the most advanced warship Earth has ever built. experimental armor, AI-assisted targeting systems, and enough firepower to level a continent. Against 200 alien bioships that can eat planets, Rodriguez pointed out. Morrison smiled grimly. When have the odds ever been in our favor? Besides, I read the Cathara transmission. These Vorthok things are basically space locusts. They swarm and consume, but locusts are not known for their tactical thinking. Sir Chen interrupted. There is something else you should know about our destination. According to galactic databases, the Cathara homeworlds are classified as garden worlds. Gravity's 0.8 Earth standard oxygen-rich atmosphere, no dangerous predators or environmental hazards. The Cathara themselves appear to be herbivorous and have no history of warfare. Morrison nodded. That explained why they were being overrun so easily. What about their ships? Minimal defensive capabilities, Chen continued. Their vessels appear to be designed for exploration and transport, not combat. Their energy weapons are primarily used for mining operations. Rodriguez leaned forward. So we are going to help a bunch of space rabbits fight off space locusts. Great, they asked for help. Morrison said simply, that is enough for me. 3 days later, EDS Retribution dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Cathara system. The ship was sleek and angular, built for speed and destruction. Her hull was dark gray, almost black, and covered in sensor arrays and weapon ports. She looked exactly like what she was, a predator built by predators. On the bridge, Morrison studied the tactical display. The Vorthok fleet had advanced faster than expected. They were already engaging the Cathara home fleet above the main colony world. The bioships looked exactly as the data had described them. Massive. Insect-like creatures that moved through space with disturbing organic grace. Captain called out, Tactical Officer Ryan Torres from his console. I am reading heavy combat near Cathara Prime. The alien fleet appears to be losing badly, Morrison. He could see that for himself on the main screen. The Cathara ships were small and bright, firing beams of blue energy at their attackers. The Vorthok bioships shrugged off the attacks and responded. With streams of acidic projectiles that ate through the Cathara hulls like paper, distance to combat zone. Morrison asked. 18 minutes at full speed, replied his navigator. Take us in. Charge all weapons and prepare for combat. As the Retribution accelerated toward the battle, Morrison opened a communication channel to the Cathara fleet. Cathara vessels, this is Captain Morrison of the Earth ship Retribution. We are here to assist. Please clear us a path to engage the enemy. The response came immediately, filled with static and panic. Earth ship, this is Fleet Commander Theses. We are grateful for your arrival, but you must maintain distance. The Vorthok bioships are too dangerous. Their weapons dissolve our hulls in seconds. Morrison smiled coldly. Commander Thesis, you sent a message asking for military aid. That is what we brought. Earth Defense Force ships are not built like yours. Trust me, the communication channel crackled with confusion and hope. Morrison cut the connection and turned to his weapons officer. Torres, target the largest bioship. Full spread of railgun rounds. Let us introduce these bugs to human engineering. The Retribution screamed through space toward the battle, her weapons charging and her crew ready for war. Behind them, Earth had sent their best. Ahead, an ancient evil that had consumed worlds was about to learn why humans were considered the apex predators of their home world. The Deathworlders had arrived. The first railgun round from the EDS Retribution struck the massive Vorthok bioship at 17,000 meters per second. The tungsten slug, no bigger than a coffee can, punched through the creature's thick, organic armor like it was made of wet paper. The bioship convulsed, its insect-like limbs flailing as bright yellow fluid sprayed into space. Fleet Commander Thesis watched in stunned silence from the bridge of his command vessel. The human ship was still 15 kilometers away, yet its weapons had wounded the largest Vorthok bioship with a single shot. His own energy beams barely left scorch marks on their enemies' hulls. Impossible, whispered his tactical officer. How can such a small projectile cause so much damage? Thesis had no answer. The human ship was less than half the size of the wounded bioship. Yet it had accomplished more in one attack than his entire fleet had managed in 2 hours of combat. He watched as more railgun rounds streaked across space, each one finding its target with deadly precision. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the Retribution, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the battle unfold. The Vorthok bioships were impressive in size, but they moved like living creatures rather than warships. They twisted and writhed in space, trying to avoid his weapons. But their organic nature made them predictable. "Target their propulsion organs," Morrison ordered. "Disable them first, then we can pick them apart at leisure." "Aye, Captain," replied Torres from his weapons console. "I am reading massive internal damage on the first target. Whatever these things are made of, they do not like kinetic impacts." Morrison nodded. He had studied the data on bioships during the journey here. Organic materials, no matter how thick or tough, were not designed to handle the massive kinetic energy of railgun rounds. The Vorthok had evolved to fight enemies who used energy weapons, not solid projectiles moving at incredible speeds. "Captain," called out communications. "Officer Lisa Hayes. The Cathara fleet commander is requesting permission to assist." Morrison glanced at the tactical display. The Cathara ships were hanging back, their weapons having proven useless against the Vorthok armor. "Tell Commander these is to focus on rescue operations. Get their people off any damaged ships and keep clear of the combat zone." As Morrison spoke, one of the Vorthok bioships turned toward the Retribution and opened fire. A stream of acidic projectiles flew through space, glowing green against the stars. Morrison watched them approach with professional interest. "Evasive maneuvers," he ordered calmly. The Retribution rolled to port, her engines firing in precise bursts. The acidic rounds passed harmlessly through the space where she had been moments before. The human ship's computer had calculated the trajectory and timing perfectly. "Their weapons are slow," observed Torres. "Looks like organic projectiles. Probably some kind of digestive acid." "Disgusting, but predictable," Morrison replied. "Continue firing. Focus on the cluster of 3 bioships near the planet." On the Cathara command ship, Isis watched the human vessel dance through space like a predator playing with its prey. The Retribution fired another volley of railgun rounds, and 2 more bioships shuddered under the impacts. One of them began to list badly, yellow fluid streaming from multiple holes in its hull. "Commander," said his communications officer, her voice filled with awe, "I am receiving detailed scans from the human ship. They are sharing their targeting data with us." Dices looked at the information appearing on his screens. The humans had analyzed the Vorthok bioships in incredible detail. They had identified weak points, internal organs, and structural vulnerabilities that the Cathara had never even noticed. It was like watching a master hunter dissect prey they had never seen before. "They fight like they were born for it," whispered his tactical officer. This is felt a chill run through his body. The humans had arrived only minutes ago, yet they were already winning a battle that his people had been losing for hours. What kind of species developed such deadly skills? The battle continued for another 20 minutes. The Vorthok bioships tried different tactics, attacking in coordinated groups and attempting to ram the human vessel. Nothing worked. The Retribution was too fast, too precise, and too well armed. Her captain anticipated every move and responded with devastating accuracy. When the last bioship finally died, its massive body drifting in space like a dead whale, Morrison allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction. "Status report." "All targets neutralized, sir," Torres reported. "We are reading no active Vorthok vessels in the immediate area. Our ship took no damage." Morrison nodded and opened a communication channel to the Cathara fleet. "Commander this is Captain Morrison. The immediate threat has been eliminated. We are prepared to discuss the larger tactical situation." The response came quickly. "Captain Morrison, we are grateful for your assistance. Could you come aboard our command vessel? We need to understand what we are dealing with." Morrison considered this. Meeting face-to-face with aliens was always risky, but the Cathara seemed genuinely peaceful. Agreed. Preparing a shuttle for transport, an hour later. Morrison found himself in the main conference room of the Cathara command ship. The alien vessel was unlike anything he had ever seen. The walls were covered in living plants, and soft music played in the background. It felt more like a garden than a warship. Commander Thises was waiting for him, along with several other Cathara officers. They were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. Their movements were graceful and careful, like dancers or scholars rather than soldiers. "Captain Morrison," Thises began, his voice soft and melodic. "Your actions today have saved countless lives. We are in your debt." Morrison sat down in the offered chair, which seemed to be grown rather than manufactured. "You called for help?" "We answered." "That is what allies do." "Allies," Thises repeated the words slowly. "Yes, I suppose we are. But I must ask, what kind of world produces warriors like you? Your ship, your weapons, your tactics. They are unlike anything we have encountered." Morrison considered how to answer. The truth was complicated. Earth is what your databases probably classify as a death world. High gravity, dangerous weather, aggressive wildlife. Humans evolved as hunters and survivors. The Cathara officers exchanged glances. One of them, a female with intricate patterns painted on her arms, leaned forward. "Death world survivors. That would explain much. Your species developed in constant conflict." "Not constant," Morrison corrected, "but frequent enough. We learned to adapt, to overcome challenges. When we reached the stars, we brought those skills with us." Thises looked troubled. "The galaxy has classifications for species like yours. Deathworlders are considered ... dangerous. Most civilizations avoid contact with them." Morrison felt a flash of irritation. "Dangerous to enemies? We came here to help you, not to conquer you." "Of course," Thises said quickly. "I meant no offense. It is just ... difficult to understand. Your people travel across the galaxy to aid strangers, yet you fight with such ... enthusiasm." Morrison had heard similar comments before from other peaceful species. They could not understand how humans could be both protectors and predators. The universe is not always kind to those who cannot defend themselves. Sometimes violence is the only language that aggressors understand. Before Thises could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the Cathara ship. An officer ran into the conference room, his eyes wide with panic. "Commander," the officer gasped, "long-range sensors are detecting a massive Vorthok fleet approaching the system. Over 50 bioships, including several that are much larger than the ones we just fought." Morrison stood up, his expression hardening. "How long until they arrive?" 6 hours, maybe 7, the officer replied. Morrison turned to the ZIS commander. "I need to return to my ship immediately. This fight is far from over. We need to prepare for a much larger battle." As Morrison headed for the door, Thises called after him. "Captain, 50 ships against 1. Those are terrible odds, even for Deathworlders." Morrison paused and looked back at the Cathara commander. His smile was cold and predatory. "Commander, humans have a saying. The odds do not matter if you refuse to lose. We came here to save your people, and that is exactly what we are going to do." Thises watched the human captain leave, feeling both grateful and deeply disturbed. These Deathworlders had come to help, but their casual acceptance of violence was frightening. Still, as he looked at the tactical display showing the approaching Vorthok fleet, he realized that perhaps frightening allies were exactly what the Cathara needed. The real battle was yet to come. Dr. Amy Chen stood in the observation lounge of the Retribution, watching the Cathara fleet through the large viewing port. The alien ships moved in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming like polished silver in the starlight. They were beautiful vessels, designed for exploration and peaceful contact rather than war. Behind her, she could hear the Marines preparing for the coming battle. Their voices were loud and rough as they checked weapons and discussed tactics. To human ears, it sounded normal. To the Cathara delegation that had come aboard, it sounded like barely controlled savagery. "Dr. Chen," came a soft voice. She turned to see Ambassador Zeleth approaching, her pale blue skin almost glowing in the dim light. The Cathara diplomat looked tired and frightened. "May I speak with you?" "Of course," Chen replied, gesturing to a nearby chair. "Please, sit down," Zeleth settled gracefully into the seat, her large dark eyes fixed on Chen's face. "I need to understand your people. What we witnessed today. The way your soldiers fight. It is unlike anything in our experience." Chen nodded. She had been expecting this conversation. As the mission's xenobiologist, part of her job was to help bridge the gap between human and alien cultures. "What specifically concerns you?" "Your Marines," Zeleth said quietly. "I listened to their communications during the battle. They were enjoying themselves. They spoke of the enemy as prey. They laughed when the bioships were destroyed." Chen sighed. This was always the hardest part to explain to peaceful species. Humans evolved as hunters, ambassador. For millions of years, our survival depended on our ability to kill efficiently and without hesitation. Those instincts are still part of who we are. "But you are civilized beings," Zeleth protested. "You have art and literature and philosophy. How can you also find joy in destruction?" "Because those things are not opposites," Chen explained patiently. "Humans can be both creators and destroyers. We protect what we love by eliminating what threatens it." The Marines were not enjoying the killing itself. They were enjoying the fact that they were saving lives. Zeleth looked confused. "I do not understand the difference." "Think of it this way," Chen said. "A Cathara parent would do anything to protect their child, correct? Of course, so would a human parent. The difference is that a human parent has the instincts and abilities of an apex predator. When something threatens our young, we do not just want to drive it away. We want to eliminate it completely, so it can never threaten them again." Before Zeleth could respond, the ship's communication system crackled to life. Dr. Chen to the briefing room. Priority 1. Chen stood up. "I am sorry, Ambassador. Duty calls." She made her way through the ship's corridors to the main briefing room, where Captain Morrison was waiting with his senior officers. The holographic display showed a detailed map of the approaching Vorthok fleet. Dr. Morrison said without preamble, "I need your analysis of these bioships. Lieutenant Torres has been scanning them from long range. What you find might change everything." Chen studied the data streaming across the display. The Vorthok vessels were indeed organic, but their structure was far more complex than she had initially thought. Internal scans revealed a network of neural pathways connecting different parts of each ship. More disturbing was the evidence of a larger network connecting the ships to each other. "Captain," she said slowly, "I do not think these are ships at all. I think they are parts of a single organism. A hive mind spread across multiple bodies." Morrison leaned forward. "Explain." "Each bioship has its own nervous system, but they are all connected by some form of quantum entanglement. When one ship learns something, they all learn it instantly. When one ship is damaged, they all feel it. They are not just a fleet. They are a single creature with multiple bodies." Colonel Rodriguez whistled softly. "That explains their coordination. No wonder they move together so perfectly." "There is more," Chen continued. "I am detecting something else in the neural patterns. Fear. These creatures are terrified of something. They are not conquering the Cathara worlds because they want to. They are running from something even worse." Morrison was quiet for a long moment. "Running from what?" "I do not know," Chen admitted. "But whatever it is, it has driven them to consume everything in their path. They are not evil, Captain. They are desperate." At that moment, Lieutenant Commander Ryan Torres entered the briefing room. His dark hair was damp with sweat, and his uniform bore the marks of recent action. Torres led the ship's special operations team, the men and women who handled the most dangerous missions, Captain Torres said, saluting quickly. "My team has completed reconnaissance of the outer Vorthok positions. We managed to board one of their damaged vessels." Morrison's eyebrows rose. "You went aboard a bioship?" "Yes, sir. It was... unpleasant." Torres activated his wrist computer, projecting images into the air above the table. "The interior is completely organic. Living walls, floors that pulse like a heartbeat, and the smell, double quotes, he shuddered, like being inside a giant's stomach. What did you find? Morrison asked. Evidence that Dr. Chen is correct. The ship was not just alive, it was aware. When we moved through its corridors, it reacted to our presence. Walls contracted, passages sealed themselves, and we could hear something like screaming echoing through the entire structure. Screaming? Chen asked. Not human screaming, Torres clarified. Something else. Like the sound a dying animal makes, but amplified and repeated through every surface of the ship. We also found this. Torres activated another projection. The image showed a section of the bioship's interior wall covered in strange symbols. They seemed to move and shift even as they watched, forming new patterns and meanings. The ship was trying to communicate with us, Torres explained. Our translator programs could not make sense of most of it, but we did recognize a few concepts: pain, fear, and one word that kept repeating over and over. What word? Morrison asked. Hunger. But not hunger for food. Hunger for ... emptiness. For nothing. For the end of existence itself. Chen felt a chill run down her spine. Captain, I think the Vorthok are fleeing from something that consumes even more completely than they do. Something that destroys not just life, but the very possibility of life. Morrison stood up and walked to the viewing port. Outside, the stars looked cold and distant. Whatever they are running from, it is not our immediate problem. We have 50 Vorthok bioships approaching in 4 hours. They will destroy the Cathara whether they want to or not. Sir Torres said, there is something else. While we were aboard the bioship, we managed to access part of their collective memory. The Vorthok have encountered other species like us before. Other Deathworlders. Morrison turned around. What happened to them? They were consumed, Torres replied quietly, but not easily. The Vorthok memories show fierce battles. Entire star systems turned into war zones. The Deathworlder species fought to the very end, taking thousands of bioships with them. Did any of them survive? Chen asked. Unknown. But the Vorthok learned from those encounters. They developed new tactics, new bioweapons, specifically designed to counter Deathworlder advantages. They know we are fast, so they created ships that can match our speed. They know we are smart, so they evolve better coordination. They know we use kinetic weapons, so they grew thicker armor. Morrison smiled grimly. But they made one mistake. They assume all Deathworlders are the same, sir. Rodriguez asked. Other Deathworlders fought them with brute force. Pure aggression and superior firepower. That is not the human way. We are not just predators, Colonel. We are problem solvers. We adapt faster than our enemies can evolve. Morrison turned to address the entire room. The Vorthok think they know how to fight us because they have fought others like us before. They are wrong. Humans do not just rely on strength or speed or weapons. We use psychology. We turn our enemies' strengths against them. What do you have in mind, Captain? Chen asked. Morrison's smile became predatory. The Vorthok are a hive mind. That is their greatest strength, but it is also their greatest weakness. If we can disrupt their connection, confuse their collective intelligence, they will become nothing more than 50 separate animals fighting independently. How do we do that? Torres asked. We give them something they have never encountered before, Morrison replied. We show them that humans are not just another Deathworlder species. We are something new, something they cannot predict or understand. As if on cue, the ship's alert system activated. All hands, this is the bridge. Long-range sensors detect the Vorthok fleet has accelerated. Time to contact is now 3 hours and 15 minutes. Morrison looked at his officers. Gentlemen, lady, it is time to teach these creatures why humans are different from every other species they have encountered. We are not just predators. We are the predators that other predators fear. The bridge crew dispersed to their stations, leaving Morrison alone with his thoughts. Outside, the stars seemed brighter somehow, as if reflecting the coming battle. He had spoken confidently to his officers, but the truth was more complex. The Vorthok had consumed entire civilizations. They had defeated other Deathworlders, but they had never faced humans before. And humans, Morrison knew, were very good at doing the impossible. The Vorthok fleet arrived like a plague of giant insects descending from the darkness. 50 bioships, each one larger than the vessels Morrison had fought earlier, emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. At their center was a massive creature that dwarfed all the others, its body stretching nearly 5 kilometers from head to tail. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the enemy fleet deploy on his tactical screens. Analysis, Torres. Lieutenant Torres studied his instruments with growing concern. Sir, these ships are different from the ones we fought before. Thicker armor, redundant internal systems, and they are moving in a pattern I have never seen. It is like they are learning from our previous engagement. Of course they are, Morrison replied calmly. They share a collective memory. Every mistake we made them pay for earlier, they've already adapted to counter, as if to prove his point. The Vorthok fleet split into multiple groups, each one approaching from a different angle. Instead of the predictable swarming tactics they had used before, they now moved with calculated precision, Captain, called communications. Officer Hayes, I am receiving a transmission from Earth Command. Admiral Stone and the carrier Indomitable are en route with reinforcements, but they will not arrive for another 18 hours. Morrison nodded grimly. 18 hours might as well be 18 years. The battle would be decided long before then. What about the Cathara fleet? Commander Thesis reports his ships are ready to assist, but their weapons are still ineffective against Vorthok armor. Morrison was about to respond when Dr. Chen's voice came over the intercom. Captain, I need you in the medical bay immediately. We have a situation. Morrison left the bridge in the capable hands of Torres and made his way through the ship to the medical bay. What he found there made him stop in his tracks. On one of the examination tables lay what appeared to be a piece of the Vorthok bioship that Torres had investigated. But this piece was still alive, its surface pulsing with a faint rhythm. Doctor, please tell me you have not brought an active piece of the enemy aboard my ship, Morrison said. Chen looked up from her instruments. Captain, this is not just a piece of bioship. This is a Vorthok individual, a damaged one that became separated from the collective mind. Morrison moved closer to examine the creature. It was about the size of a large dog, with a segmented body covered in the same organic armor as the ship's. Multiple eyes dotted its head, and thin tendrils moved weakly along its sides. It is dying, Chen continued. Cut off from the hive mind, it cannot survive alone. But Captain, in the few minutes before it dies completely, I might be able to communicate with it. To what purpose? Morrison asked. To understand what they are really running from, and maybe to find a way to end this conflict without destroying them all. Morrison was quiet for a moment. Military doctrine said that enemy intelligence was valuable, but every instinct told him that keeping a living piece of the Vorthok aboard was dangerous. How long do we have? Minutes at most, Chen replied. I have already begun attempting communication through neural interface. If you authorize it, I can try direct contact. Absolutely not, Morrison said firmly. I will not risk having you infected or controlled by this thing, Captain, came a new voice from the doorway. Morrison turned to see Ambassador Zeleth entering the medical bay, followed by a Cathara he did not recognize. This is Zaref, our most skilled xenolinguist. If anyone can communicate safely with this creature, it is him. Zaref was older than most Cathara Morrison had met, with intricate silver markings covering his pale blue skin. His large eyes held a depth of knowledge that spoke of decades spent studying alien minds. I have been listening to your discussion, Zaref said in his melodic voice. I believe I can establish communication without the risks Dr. Chen mentioned. My people have developed techniques for speaking with nonverbal species. Morrison looked between the three scientists. Against his better judgment, he found himself nodding. Yeah, do it. But if this thing shows any sign of hostility or attempts to influence any of you, we terminate the experiment immediately. Zaref approached the dying Vorthok carefully, his hands glowing with a soft blue light. Morrison had heard about Cathara empathic abilities, but had never seen them in action. The alien linguist placed his palms near the creature's head and closed his eyes. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then Zaref's eyes snapped open, filled with an expression of pure terror. "What did you see?" Chen asked urgently. "Darkness," Zaref whispered. "Not the darkness of space, but the darkness of nothing. An emptiness that consumes everything it touches. Stars, planets, life itself. All of it simply ceases to exist." Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. The thing they are running from? "They call it the void hunger," Zaref continued, his voice shaking. "It came from the Galactic Center decades ago and has been consuming everything in its path. The Vorthok were not always as they are now. They were once a peaceful species, gardeners like my own people. But when the void hunger came, they had to choose between becoming monsters or becoming nothing." Chen leaned forward. "They chose to survive by consuming other worlds before the void could reach them." "More than that," Zaref replied. "They absorb the life energy of entire worlds and store it within their collective consciousness. Every planet they consume, every species they devour, continues to exist within their shared mind. It is the only way they know to preserve life against the absolute nothingness that follows them." Morrison was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Are they winning? Can they stay ahead of this void hunger indefinitely? Zaref shook his head sadly. They are slowing it down, but they cannot stop it. Every world they consume buys them perhaps a few months before they must find another. They are refugees, Captain Morrison. Refugees who have become the very thing they once feared. At that moment, the ship's alert system activated. Red alert. All hands to battle stations. Vorthok fleet is beginning their attack run. Morrison turned to leave, then paused. "Zaref, did the creature tell you anything about their tactics? Any weakness we can exploit?" "Only one thing," Zaref replied. "The largest bioship, the one at the center of their formation. It contains their prime queen, the central intelligence that coordinates the entire hive mind. If it were to be captured, rather than destroyed, ... the entire fleet would be paralyzed," Morrison finished. "Thank you. All of you." Morrison raced back to the bridge, his mind spinning with possibilities. As he arrived, Torres looked up from his console with concern written across his face. "Captain, the Vorthok are not attacking. They are broadcasting something. Put it on speakers." The bridge filled with a sound unlike anything Morrison had ever heard. It was part music, part speech, and part something else entirely. The translation computers struggled to make sense of it, but eventually words began to appear on the main screen. "Deathworlders of Earth, we know your kind. We have consumed many like you. You fight well, but you cannot save these creatures. Join us willingly, and we will preserve your species within our collective memory. Refuse, and you will die with the rest." Morrison smiled coldly. "Open a channel." When the connection was established, Morrison spoke clearly and calmly. "Vorthok, Collective. This is Captain Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. You have made one crucial error in your calculations. You assume we are here to save the Cathara from you. That is not entirely correct." There was a pause in the alien transmission. When it resumed, there was a note of confusion in the harmonics. "Explain your meaning." "Deathworlder, we are here to save everyone from the void hunger. That includes you. Dr. Chen, transmit the data package we prepared." Chen's fingers flew over her console. "Data transmitted, Captain." Morrison continued speaking to the Vorthok fleet. "You will find detailed technical specifications for a faster-than-light drive that is 40% more efficient than anything in your bioships. You will also find star charts showing uninhabited systems on the galactic rim where you could establish permanent colonies without needing to consume other species." The silence stretched. For nearly a minute before the Vorthok responded, "Why would you offer this to us, Deathworlder?" "We are your enemies." "Because you are not our enemies," Morrison replied. "You are fellow survivors. Humans understand what it means to face extinction. We understand the choices you have made, but we also understand that there might be better choices available. And if we refuse your offer, Morrison's voice hardened, then we will stop you. Not because we hate you, but because we cannot allow you to destroy the innocent. The choice is yours. Evolution or extinction. On the tactical display, the Vorthok fleet had stopped advancing. The bioships hung motionless in space, their collective mind processing this unexpected development. Morrison waited, knowing that the next few minutes would determine the fate of multiple species. Behind him, Ambassador Zeleth whispered to Dr. Chen, "Is your captain always this confident when facing impossible odds?" Chen smiled slightly. "Ambassador, you have not seen anything yet. This is just how humans negotiate." The Vorthok fleet remained motionless for 7 long minutes. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the alien bioships on his tactical display. 50 massive creatures floating in space, their collective mind deliberating over his unexpected offer. Captain Torres whispered from his station, "I am detecting new contacts entering the system. 3 ships, approaching fast from the Galactic core direction." Morrison felt his blood turn cold. Identification. Unknown configuration. The ships appear to be constructed from some kind of dark metal that absorbs our sensor beams. They are not responding to any communication attempts. Before Morrison could respond, the Vorthok transmission resumed. The harmonics were different now, filled with something that could only be described as terror. "Deathworlders of Earth, you do not understand. The void hunger has found us. It has followed our trail to this system. We must consume these worlds immediately and flee, or we will all cease to exist." Morrison turned to Dr. Chen. "How long before those unknown ships reach us?" "At their current speed, 43 minutes, she replied, her voice tight with concern. "And how long would it take the Vorthok to consume the Kithara worlds?" "Based on their previous patterns, approximately 6 hours. Morrison made his decision. "Open a channel to all ships in the system, Kithara, Vorthok, and human vessels." When the connection was established, Morrison's voice carried across space to every listener. "This is Captain Morrison of Earth. I am declaring this system under the protection of the Terran Defense Force. No world will be consumed today. No species will face extinction on my watch, Ambassador." Zeleth's voice came through the communication system from the Kithara command ship. "Captain Morrison, what are you proposing?" "I am proposing we stop running and start fighting. The Vorthok have been fleeing from this void hunger for decades, consuming worlds to stay ahead of it. But running only delays the inevitable. It is time to make a stand." The Vorthok Collective responded immediately. "Impossible, Deathworlder. The void hunger cannot be fought. It simply unmakes everything it touches. Matter, energy, even the fabric of space itself dissolves before it." "Maybe," Morrison conceded. "But it has never faced Deathworlders before. Torres, what can you tell me about those incoming ships?" Torres studied his instruments carefully. "Sir, they appear to be approximately 2 kilometers in length, but sensors are having trouble getting accurate readings. Whatever they are made of, it is absorbing everything we send at it. No energy signatures, no heat emissions, nothing." Morrison nodded. "Chen, theoretical question. If something could unmake matter at the quantum level, what would be the most effective weapon against it?" Chen was quiet for a moment, her mind racing through possibilities. "Captain, if these void hunger ships truly can dissolve matter, then conventional weapons would be useless. But there might be one approach that could work. Explain raw kinetic energy delivered at near light speed. If you hit something hard enough and fast enough, you might be able to disrupt its molecular bonds before it can unmake the projectile." Morrison smiled grimly. "Torres, can our railguns achieve near-light velocity?" "Not with standard rounds, sir. But if we removed the safety limiters and used our entire power grid to charge a single shot..." Torres paused. "Running calculations. It would drain our engines completely. We would be dead in space afterward. But could it work? Maybe, if the target holds still long enough for us to aim." Morrison turned to address the Vorthok fleet. "Vorthok Collective, I am offering you a choice. Help us fight these void hunger ships, and we will help you find a new home far from their influence. Continue as you are, and eventually they will catch you anyway. The response came quickly. You ask us to risk everything on a plan that might not work. I am asking you to risk everything on a plan that might save everyone, Morrison corrected, including yourselves. There was another long silence. Then, slowly, the Vorthok bioships began to move. They arranged themselves in a defensive formation between the Cathara worlds and the approaching threat. Very well, Deathworlder Morrison. We will stand with you. But know that if we fail, the blame for our extinction will rest with you. Morrison nodded. Understood. Now, here's what we are going to do. For the next 30 minutes, the unlikely alliance prepared for battle. The Cathara ships, though lightly armed, served as mobile sensor platforms to track the incoming threat. The Vorthok bioships positioned themselves to serve as shields, their massive bodies forming a living barrier. And the Retribution prepared for a shot that would either save the system or leave them helpless in space. When the Void Hunger ships finally came into visual range, Morrison understood why the Vorthok were so terrified. The vessels were not black, they were an absence of black. They seemed to swallow light itself, creating holes in space that hurt to look at directly. Captain Torres called out, his voice strained. I am having trouble maintaining target lock. These things are interfering with our sensors just by existing. Use visual targeting, Morrison ordered. Manual aim. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. On the main screen, the lead Void Hunger ship opened fire. A beam of absolute nothingness lanced out toward the nearest Vorthok bioship. Where it touched the creature's armor, matter simply stopped existing. The bioship screamed across all frequencies as part of its body was erased from reality. All ships. Open fire, Morrison commanded. The battle that followed was unlike anything recorded in galactic history. The Vorthok bioships attacked with streams of acid and swarms of smaller creatures. But their weapons had no effect on enemies that existed in a state of antimatter. The Cathara energy beams were absorbed harmlessly by the dark hulls. Only the Retribution's kinetic weapons seemed to have any impact. Railgun rounds moving at incredible speeds managed to physically push the Void Hunger ships before being unmade, but the damage was minimal. Torres, is the special shot ready? Morrison asked. Charging now, sir? 90 seconds to full power. Morrison watched as another Vorthok bioship was partially erased by the enemy's weapons. The creature was still alive, but a massive chunk of its body had simply ceased to exist. Vorthok Collective, I need you to do something that goes against every instinct you have. Speak. Deathworlder, I need one of your ships to ram the lead enemy vessel. Hold it in place for 60 seconds while we take our shot. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, the Vorthok responded. You ask us to sacrifice one of our own for a plan that might not work. I am asking you to sacrifice one to save all, Morrison replied. Sometimes, that is what survival requires. Without another word, the smallest Vorthok bioship broke formation and accelerated toward the lead Void Hunger vessel. The creature's mental screams echoed across the communication channels as it approached its target. Knowing it was flying toward certain death, the collision was tremendous. The bioship wrapped its body around the enemy vessel like a giant octopus, holding it motionless even as the Void Hunger's weapons began to erase it piece by piece. Target locked, Torres announced. Firing in 3, the railgun round left the Retribution at 97% of light speed. The tungsten slug, compressed to incredible density and moving faster than anything had ever moved in this system, struck the lead Void Hunger ship at the exact moment the sacrificial bioship was completely erased. The result was spectacular. The enemy vessel didn't explode, it folded in on itself like a house of cards. The dark metal hull crumpled and twisted, reality reasserting itself where the antimatter field had been disrupted. Direct hit, Torres shouted. Enemy vessel is destroyed. The remaining 2 Void Hunger ships immediately began to retreat. apparently deciding that whatever they had been hunting was not worth facing weapons that could actually harm them. Morrison slumped in his command chair as the Retribution's engines went offline, their power completely drained. Around them, the surviving Vorthok bioships were already beginning to change, without the immediate threat of the void hunger driving them. Their collective mind was considering new possibilities. Captain Morrison, came the transmission from the Vorthok Collective. We have accessed the star charts you provided. There are indeed suitable systems on the galactic rim where we could establish colonies without the need to consume other species. Morrison nodded weakly. What about the worlds you have already absorbed? The civilizations preserved in your collective memory. They will live again. On new worlds, in new bodies, but they will live. You have given us something we thought lost forever, Deathworlder. You have given us hope. 3 days later, Morrison stood in the observation lounge of the newly arrived carrier, Indomitable. Watching the last Vorthok bioships depart for the galactic rim, Admiral Stone stood beside him, reading from a datapad. The Galactic Council has formally recognized Earth as a major power, Stone said. They are offering us membership in the hegemony of aligned worlds, along with territorial rights and trade agreements. Morrison nodded absently. What did we tell them? That Earth would consider their offer. In the meantime, we have established the Terran Accords with both the Cathara Confederation and the Vorthok Collective. A three-way alliance for mutual defense and cooperation, Morrison smiled. And what about the void hunger?